Hello, manga and anime lovers. This is Branch, and today I'm going to be talking about a new anime that's airing this spring? Yeah, this spring, called Mysterious Disappearances. You might have seen it. I read it when it first came out. Not a lot. The first, maybe three or four chapters. I think, the first two mysteries, and I don't really remember anything about it. Just the character design. I mean, unironically, the design of these characters are very striking and very kind of original. It reminds me of something, but I can't put my finger on it. Anyways, let me see. Where are my notes? Here we go. So, from what I remember, this episode starts a little bit different to how the manga does, although I could be wrong. I think the manga started right with the bookstore scene, but the anime starts showing, I don't want to say who she is because that might be a little bit of a spoiler, but the little girl exiting, I think, the train station, the subway station, wherever that place is that, what's his name? Adashino goes to at the end of the episode. I mean, I don't really care if they change a little bit from the manga. I'm not too big of a stickler on that, as long as it's good. And this one was pretty good. I'm a little bit undecided on if I think it's really good or not. I'll have to wait till I see episode 2 to make my final decision. But so far, it's pretty promising. The tone of this series is pretty spooky, not scary at all, but it might get scary later on. Right now, it's just a little spooky with a great, I want to say, gothic theme to it, modern day city gothic theme. I feel like this story is going to be a tragedy because of the monologue by the main character at the start, where she talks about how this story is about her meeting in friendship with Adashino and how it ends, how they part. I don't know if I like what I'm getting into. I don't like tragedies, but if it's good enough, I'll like it. Well, I guess I'll move on to talking about Sumideko as the main character. So Sumideko is a pretty good, I would say she's a really good main character. Aside from the obvious design, the art style that she's drawn in, her personality is really good. I really like that she's 28 years old. I feel like we don't have a lot of manga and anime with adult protagonists, although recently in the isekai scene we've been seeing that more and more, but put that aside for now. Yeah, I really like that she's older and she really acts her age, I want to say. I've worked in customer service before, and I can tell you that people like her are exactly the kind of people I can imagine being there. She's super realistic that way. And of course, she's a writer, which, as a amateur writer myself, I just love. I started writing from a young age, probably I think around 8, so a little before she did. Although, was she in high school? I think she was in elementary, so maybe she started before me. It doesn't really matter. But I feel her insecurity about writing. Even though I've never published anything, her insecurity seems to come from outside sources, whereas mine comes from inside sources, where I read what I wrote, and sometimes I think it's good, sometimes I'm like, this is garbage. She also likes urban legends and horror stories. It's not too harped on. In fact, I completely forgot it before I skimmed through the episode to remind myself before recording this, and she does mention that once. So I guess that's kind of necessary if she's going to be the main character of this series. She's got to not be super put off by this stuff. Now I've kind of beat around the bush so far, but the biggest downside to this series so far, which it doesn't have to be a downside. I'm not one of those people who will harp on fan service, but it is really fan service heavy. Mostly in the opening, like holy cow, they did not need to go that far in the opening. That's a little much. Inside the episode itself, not so much. Like obviously she's drawn a certain way, and she does have, at the very least, she does have an appealing character design aside from the fan service. I would say all the fan service is kind of incidental with her. She's not really, well, aside from a couple scenes, she's not really put off by it. She's not really uncomfortable by it, so it doesn't bother me too much. I'll talk about that more when I talk about the episode as a whole. So let's move on to Adashino. So he's, I would say, a really unique character. I've watched a lot of anime, I've read a lot of manga, and haven't read a lot of about a lot of characters like him. He looks really young, but his voice is really old. I don't mean like an old man, but like a grown up. It's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance when you first hear his voice. But I really like his character design too, and especially the eyes, which I'll talk about later. He can come across super friendly or really creepy, and I really like that about him. His interactions with Sumineko are a bit crass, although she seems to bounce off of it well. I mean, I've had similar interactions with my coworkers before, teasing each other and bouncing back and forth, when we have nothing to do. So it's pretty good banter. I like their relationship. He clearly admires and desires Sumineko, but he doesn't really do anything inappropriate, even though he makes it very clear that he enjoys looking at her. Now, onto the topic of what is he? Because he's clearly not a normal human. I don't know if he's human at all. Maybe he's cursed. He seems to be able to detect curses. He can smell them when he goes to her home. And then he can either summon or interact with these signs that pop up. These like warning signs or danger signs that seem to pop up around cursed objects. I'm not sure if he has any control over them or if they follow him. It's kind of up in the air right now, although I'm sure we'll learn about it soon, since if I remember correctly, the next mystery is a little longer and more involved. Now, as for his situation, he seems to be, at the end of the show, he tries to sell the cursed book or exchange it to someone in the same train station we saw in the OP, which I find pretty bizarre, and he doesn't do it, which makes me think that there is some kind of risk to doing this kind of trade. Although they did say they would give him a train ticket, which can't be a normal train ticket, so I don't even know where that goes. But he's clearly trying to get something by finding curses, and I'm not sure exactly what his objective is. Like I said, maybe he's cursed and he's trying to get uncursed. Since the monologue at the start makes it seem like a tragedy, maybe he's dead and he's trying to move on. I'm not entirely sure. Now, more on to the episode as a whole. I like the humor, especially Sumineko and Adashino's banter. Again, it's really funny. Especially the scene where Adashino tells the manager that Sumineko is out with massive constipation. This poor woman, she's gonna come back to work, and she's not gonna know why the manager. So she's just gonna be confronted with this. Harmless overall, and very, very funny. And also, he was looking out for her too. He covered for her without even talking to her first. He knew something was up, covered for her, and then went to check up on her a little later. For the spooky vibe, like I said, it's pretty good. I like the art. The art's really good, especially the general atmosphere. It can go from lighthearted to spooky really quick. I really like that, and I like that they didn't censor the blood at all. When she was bleeding from her eyes when she was a child, that was a bit of an interesting image. And I especially, this just reminds me of a nice scene, was when she was crying and it washed away the blood. Oh, I thought that was really good animation-wise. I really like that. For the main mystery, it's basically about this book that curses you to grow older or younger. It might have other curses as well, but the poems she reads out loud are the ones that make you older and younger, which you can only do this at midnight in a full moon, and if you're at least 28 years old. I don't know if 28 is a special number in Japan. It seems kind of contrived, but there might be some cultural relevance that I'm not aware of. Not that I really care overall. It's still a good mystery, and I really like the mechanics. I'm curious as to why she could use it past midnight when she was running away from Arashino, when she didn't want to give up the book. But I guess that's neither here nor there. We'll probably learn more about it later, since the book wasn't sold away, so it'll probably come up again. The pacing was really good, but a little too fast, if I'm going to be honest. I felt like there wasn't a lot of time to breathe. I would have liked more quiet scenes, more just silent scenes with nothing going on. It felt like there was almost always dialogue. It's good, but it's not ideal. If they slow down a little bit past this point, because I assume the next episode will be a two-parter, if not like a 1.5 episode parter, unless they cut out a whole lot. Again, I don't remember a lot from the manga. I just remember the second mystery being longer than the first. Although I might be thinking of the third mystery. I don't think I read that far, but I might have. Anyways, the major downside to this series that I think a lot of people can see at first glance is the fan service. I don't want to say it's a bit much, but it is a bit much, especially in the opening. If it wasn't in the opening, I wouldn't care that much. I mean, there was a shower scene too, and also the first scene with Sumiriko. Hold on. How the heck do you say your name again? Sumireko. I haven't seen her name wrong the whole time. The first scene with Sumireko is zoomed in on her behind. It's zooming out. Maybe that was supposed to be humorous. I certainly got a laugh out of it. I don't know if you're supposed to. But as soon as that happened, I thought, okay, slow down, animators. You don't need to go this hard. You can take your time. Her design is already fan servicey enough, so you don't need to be doing all these angles. But aside from the opening, the shower scene, and that one bizarre introduction scene, I didn't really mind the fan service that much. Like, it's not forced or anything. Again, aside from the two exceptions that I mentioned, it's just kind of there, which is fine. I never have a problem with that kind of fan service. And again, the emotional plot of this episode, because there was all the spooky stuff, but really the crux of this episode was exploring Sumireko's authorship and how she feels inadequate as an author, and how after she was young, she was praised as a child prodigy, but because she didn't improve very much as a child, people just kind of stopped caring. Because as she says, a child having talent is one thing, but once you're an adult, being able to write isn't anything special. I thought it was really nice to examine that kind of dynamic with early talent, that if you don't practice enough, or if you're just not, I guess I want to say fortunate enough, then that stuff can, it doesn't go away, but if it doesn't grow, then it's useless. Even though she's been practicing, she's still writing. She has writer's block now, and she can't get into it. Now, perhaps all these spooky events, these mysterious disappearances, if you will ignite her writer's spark again. It already kind of happened this episode when she was shrunken down to a child, which that was brutal, by the way, when Adashino mentioned how her adult body was basically squeezed into that of a child. That was an image I did not need in my mind before bed. Overall, I just really liked that emotional plot, and how it was how it was resolved was all right. I think it could have been done a little better. It was probably a product of the pacing, because it felt a little too fast, but I like the idea of it, and it was executed fine enough. How she knows at least someone cares about her work, because in the beginning of the episode, she brushes off Adashino whenever he talks about liking her work. She's like, yeah, whatever, because she doesn't believe that she has any value. But at the end, when he really reiterates that he wants to read her next book, she has that backing behind her, that she knows at least someone will enjoy whatever she writes. And sometimes that's all you need. As a creative person myself, as long as I know someone, like even if one person watches and likes a video, or one person reads and likes what I wrote, that's all I need to push me to want to make the next project that I'm going into. Something like that. I really like that explanation and exploration. Let's see, what's next? Oh, the music and sound design. The music was pretty good. I don't really remember it, but it did stand down in a couple scenes, especially in the latter half when Adashino was confronting Sumideko in the alleyway. I really liked the creepy camera angles and the music and the lighting. All that stuff was fantastic. I really liked all that, even if it was a little bit rushed. Now, the opening, I think I've spoken quite enough about the opening already. Aside from the gratuitous fan service in the opening, it's pretty good. I really like the song. The visuals, they're something. The ending is where it's at. I really like the ending, especially the visuals. Oh my goodness, they're fantastic. They're so creative with like this finger drawing charcoal, or this black dust on the background, and I don't really know how to explain it. It's just really good. You have to see it for yourself. And the song is pretty good too, even though I don't remember it. I'll probably remember it after watching it again. I guess my closing thoughts is overall it was a pretty good first episode. I have some concerns, but I have no doubt if the next episode addresses them, then this series will be fantastic. As long as it doesn't get lower from here, then we're good to go, because this episode was pretty good. So I think that's all from me today. Hopefully you'll be there for when I review episode 2. See ya!